So, recently, via a conversation with some friends about why Homestuck 2 equal bad, I crystallized and organized some thoughts and feelings about a certain form of story that have been spinning wheels in my brain since approximately late 2015. Now, full disclosure, Homestuck 2 bad is not a new or particularly hot take for anyone who knows anything about the blanket reception of Homestuck 2, and I won't actually go into the various individual cases of what it does bad, or else we will be here way too long. So, you're just gonna have to take me at my word when I say the overarching things wrong with it, and only give direct text evidence trope talk / explanation point style on screen without expounding much. Instead, I shall use Homestuck 2 as a prime springboard for me to talk about what I actually wish to dig into: legacy series. A legacy series is my word for long-running, primarily serialized, and usually episodic franchises that evolve and reiterate themselves into perpetuity. Things like Strawberry Shortcake or Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, two things that belong in the same group. Yu-Gi-Oh!, Pokemon, Scooby-Doo, it's mostly done with children's media, but another fun example that I count amongst them with maybe an asterisk or two is the Muppets and how those characters have been reiterated upon for decades and decades and decades with the same hallmarks and core elements, but getting constantly passed between writers and actors and projects. Star Trek also for sure counts as a legacy series. I have many thoughts and feelings about legacy series, and after my cohorts and I had the aforementioned session of commiserating in our apartment's living room about the various flaws and failings of Homestuck 2, it galvanized me to actively articulate those thoughts. Because Homestuck is, in fact, a property that is almost trivially easy to make a legacy series out of. The fact that Spurb is the reproductive system for universes that canonically takes the form most likely to be utilized and sought out by pubescent beings of a given society means you can just take a handful of adolescents and put them through the crucible and see what happens indefinitely, while still using the familiar improvisational, inscrutable structure and irreverent tone that is deeply core to Homestuck. The weird, ill-defined magic systems lend themselves really well to being passed off between different creative teams and slightly refined and reinterpreted. It is explicitly canon that Earth got bombarded by asteroids because each asteroid was intended for a person, usually a kid, who booted up a copy of Spurb to play with their buddies. Each of these base elements, each of them, is such a good segue into this is what happened when these other kids tried to play it. This is a different planet where we've implied a different society, and the only way you're gonna know it is by how the characters act and interact with each other as they leave and their planet gets destroyed. This is a new application / interrogation of the magic system. This is 2 sessions slamming into one another for a cosmic metaphor in Who the F Knows. Like, there's so much potential here. However, all that legacy series potential was irrevocably squandered because Homestuck 2, and by extension the epilogues and Pester Quest, is such a destabilizing force within both the canon of Homestuck and the community around it. Like, instead of taking the time and effort to take a step back and consider what made the original resonate with others, the new writing team instead decided to go, hey, what if the ending wasn't the ending, and the characters didn't actually get to settle into peaceful lives on this planet that they collaboratively built, and half the cast weren't even friends anymore, and there's the 2 of the protagonists who they're now primary antagonists, because we want to chuck in some fun soapy shit, and we kept dragging up these elements from the original canon that were already put to rest, or better left uninterrogated, and also adding more things and new touchy subject matter, but not in a separate space. Not in a separate space. This is regular Homestuck still, just more. And also these specific headcanons that this specific writing team likes are so totally canon now, despite the fact that a core draw of Homestuck was that the only whats of the characters that had any true importance were their likes, dislikes, and propensity for cooperation. Like, it's not even slightly in the spirit of a legacy series because it promotes itself as Homestuck 2. It's Homestuck, but more. It's more of that thing that we all liked, but we've altered things and chucked more concepts into the original because we wanted more from the original, but specifically this more. So we're making that consequences be damned. And that is not the spirit or form of a true legacy series. But what, you might ask, is the true spirit and form of a legacy series? Why does Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles have such profound staying power with a concept and title that positively ridiculous? Why do people still care about the Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Digimon franchises? What the hell is going on with Five Nights at Freddy's? A proper legacy series is about taking the core concepts behind the franchise's initial conception and then color shifting them a bit and occasionally adding elements. And I know that sounds similar to what I was just admonishing Homestuck 2 for, but there's a deep fundamental difference. Case in point, the Scooby-Doo franchise. I mostly know what I know about Scooby-Doo because I watched Jello Apocalypse tirelessly, and he's really into Scooby-Doo, so I have a chunk of runoff knowledge. With that series, it started in the late 50s, early 60s, and the core concept that continues to be reiterated upon and minorly modified to this day was just silly show about spooky things that always wraps up with a fun little bow at the end, with a great big dumb dog mascot who spooks at seeing his own shadow. And as the years went on, they went, how do we keep this franchise appealing to people? And they kept coming up with solutions to that question. They replaced everyone but Shaggy and Scooby with Scrappy to boost ratings for the failing show, which worked, by the way. Kids really liked Scrappy, but also kids really liked Minions and eating paste. They did all these weird little shows where it was just Shaggy, Scooby, Daphne, no Velma, Scrappy, and Flim Flam. Yeah, remember Flim Flam? And of course they had plenty of misses alongside their hits, but the thing is, Scooby-Doo is now this nigh ubiquitous piece of American pop culture because years and years and years of people just kept going, we have these core elements that are intrinsically Scooby-Doo, how do we redress them and restyle them and breathe new life into them? All that is the big difference between a true legacy series and something someone else is just dragging out until it all dries up. A legacy series is a careful and consistent effort to ask the question, how do we give this a new metamorphosis, and balancing that with keeping things recognizable via retaining the elements most core to its being. This is opposed to a property that is very transparently being made out of a usually short-lived desire to wrestle and squeeze more out of the original iteration of the story until it is nigh unrecognizable because something, surely we can do more different things by continuing off of this same thread. Legacy series are so cool and neat and really good as a shape for stories and franchises to take for the exact same reason roguelikes and roguelites are cool and neat and really good as a shape for a game to take. The base game elements of a roguelike never change, only the events of each run, functionally providing far more variety and things for your brain to sink its teeth into and go than a non-roguelike with the same building blocks would be able to. The joy and the intrigue is in the reshuffling and the searching for favorite elements and rediscovering new aspects of this thing you've liked a long time and put hours into. That's why I like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles so much, because out of all the legacy series I know, it's closest to if a roguelike game was a fictional narrative. They take the original concept and hit hard reset. It always starts with 4 turtle mutants raised by a rat man from Japan that taught them ninjutsu who, in their adolescence, have to deal with the sinister force that is the cause of their original mutation, as well as the long-standing grudge of the Shredder haunting their family. They always befriend April O'Neil, who always helps them out with things that they, as mutants, cannot do themselves. Sometimes they encounter specific previously established characters from past iterations, or even a few brand new characters made for this run, but not everyone, every time, and the returning characters can slot into things any way they please, so long as their most important aspects remain unchanged. It's nearly identical to the grander shape of Hades, or The Binding of Isaac, or NetHack, or Don't Starve, where there's a core goal and trajectory and a veritable sandbox to play around in. As you work towards said goal, that becomes all the more engaging and enriching as you familiarize yourself with all the tools at your disposal and or unlock new abilities. Another thing about legacy series that sets them apart from other groups of narratives and also polymorphs me into Abby from Turning Red is the fact that they're essentially engineered with multiple jumping on points, and in doing so, passively create a depth of lore and investment that something in a different form wouldn't be able to accomplish unless it was actively planting and planning for such ambitious depth from the word go. You don't need to have seen the previous Muppet media to really enjoy Muppet Christmas Carol, but watching episodes of The Muppet Show will absolutely start your brain on which characters were cast as which Muppets and the synergy of it all. You don't need to have an encyclopedic knowledge of each individual Digimon season to get really into Digimon Frontier, aka the best and most underrated Digimon season, but having that knowledge sure does make Magicianmon and Angemon's roles feel way more potent. Like, Star Trek Voyager is the only Star Trek thing I have seen in its entirety, but I still adore catching glimpses of other times and places throughout the franchise's history, both in the literal making of Star Trek and the in-universe timeline of events. You don't actually need to have read literally any JoJo part before jumping into Stone Ocean, regardless of what the more rabid section of the fanbase might try to enforce upon others. But seeing Stardust Crusaders beforehand and becoming attached to Jotaro will absolutely activate the brain go burst switch whenever Jolene says yada yada doa or doesn't ora ora. Like, quick aside, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is actually a really interesting case legacy series wise, because while literally every example of a legacy series that I know is always something that gets passed off between teams for new iterations, JoJo's is still being written primarily by one guy. Araki consults his editors, who I'm sure have changed a few times over the years, same with his various assistants, but he is the guy that the series has always sprung from. I just thought that was neat to share. The man is truly dedicated. This passive accumulation of lore and inherent variety of storylines within the same sandbox creates this vibe of an establishment that's alive and living and housing the same things, all of them changing as everything does. And is that not sublime? Does it not draw you to reverence and appreciation for the care and time put into the repeated telling of the stories these concepts have to offer? Are you not entertained? That's absolutely not the appropriate context for that quote, and I'm keeping it that way. I think my favorite aspect of a legacy series, though, is multiple iterations on the same themes and motifs in settings and with characters that stand as figures who can be any given version of themselves each time you evolve what you're working with. It's a boundless source of evergreen wonder. As an example, one of my favorite legacy series is Strawberry Shortcake, and it's actually quite unique amongst legacy series. You see, Strawberry Shortcake started its life as a bunch of little characters on greeting cards, you know, invitations and get well soon and holiday greeting cards that people send to one another in an effort to let one another know, hey, I thought of you, and I wanted to give you something to make your day nicer. The lady who originally made those little characters with their cute dessert names and charming droopy hats and little details about them put this level of attention and care into her drawings that just overflowed from the paper. Then someone at Hallmark or Hasbro or somewhere went, you know, we could make little dolls of these guys. It'd be pretty neat. And then someone else went, well, if we're making dolls, we can make a little miniseries. And it just kind of perpetuated to this day. There's currently brand new Strawberry Shortcake clips just up on YouTube. The central themes that come through most strongly to me from the whole of Strawberry Shortcake are the ideas of connection and comfort and sweetness, and that things can be simple and bite-sized and still hold so much inside them. And that links all the way back to those soft, cozy little drawings on the greeting cards that were meant to portray what is soft and comforting and good in life. Things like good food, reminding people that you love them, doing things with others, inviting them into your life, that sort of thing. And each series incorporates those elements into themselves in different ways. I never saw the first iteration of animations, but judging by what I've read on the wiki, which is a real thing that I was very surprised and not in the slightest disappointed to learn existed, it was a series of little set pieces that invited you to sit down a spell and get to know everyone, to carry with you before you got moving along again. The version that I grew up with from the early 2000s answered the series' core thematic questions of what makes life sweet and good and comfy, with exploring your surroundings and playing nice with others, making things with your friends and being involved with them, being a good listener and helping out when someone really needs you. In early 2010, Berry Bitty Adventures created a sense of comfort in this small, kind, loving community of little whimsical creatures and miniature girls. The answer to what makes life sweet and good and comfy crystallized into finding and having a place in your community, doing the things you love, and sharing your life and your time with your loved ones. Those shiny new YouTube clips I was talking about have a speed and energy that feels much less cozy than the rest of the franchise, or maybe I'm just outgrowing it, but it's no less bright and sweet and answers what makes life sweet and good and comfy with solving problems and being creative, getting others' perspectives and opening up to new things and new people, expanding your comfort zone and your network. When the same themes keep getting iterated upon over and over, it creates this tapestry of questions and answers that build on one another and shift the lens the series looks through, bit by bit, story by story. It makes intellectual properties into living, breathing ideas and concepts that can move over time from, hi, I like you, I want to make you feel comfy and cared for, to, Isn't it cool how you can find comfort and caring anywhere if you're looking for it? If I may loop this back to my initial catalyst, Homestuck wasn't just easy to make a legacy series out of because it had a Star Trek-esque avenue to say, meanwhile, in a totally different corner of the universe, or a Yu-Gi-Oh-like ability to go, anyway, let's reskin and restructure things a bit and see where that takes us, or even its obvious need for a fresh new jumping on point, which a direct sequel is absolutely not. The very themes that arise from Homestuck, when you examine it, lend themselves to being refined and reiterated upon and passed around between people. It's about improvisation, personalization, irony versus sincerity, reverence versus irreverence, the concepts of time and space, like building and all its affiliates. It sparked so much fan content because it was effectively a weird, vague sandbox that Andrew Hussey made to tell a story steeped in internet culture and shot with that specific brand of cringe and emotional volatility that is native to middle schoolers all over the world. I genuinely think Homestuck is good, actually, in spite of the many structural flaws with its writing and progression. The structural flaws are easy to rectify, retcon, or just completely ignore upon further separate iterations. Just ask JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. I'm genuinely so unhappy knowing that the enormous sandbox of ideas and chaotic world building behind Homestuck didn't get pushed into a fun new shape and context. A group of people just kind of decided to shuffle and force the sandbox to their liking and dig into the various holes Homestuck left open to clog them with stuff that's just bad filling for those places. It makes me unhappy, knowing it could have had a better legacy. So, thanks for dropping by. I have not yet mastered the art of outros, but I'm going to soon because I've made a. It's not that I've made a promise to myself. I'm done making promises. I feel like my life would be better if I did creative things consistently instead of just sporadically. I feel like I should give myself some consistency. And I should give you guys a shorter outro. So, I hope you have a good day. Eat some tasty snacks, and look at the sky every now and again, because I think it likes you. Ridiculous. Why do people still care about the Yu-Gi-Oh or Digimon franchises? What the hell is going on with Five Nights at Freddy's? A proper legacy series is about taking... God damn it, I can't do this.